So moving forward in this presentation on societal Satanism and how it works in our culture. And I think this is going to be very powerfully important to break this down, because people think that Satanism is just this crazy religion with men in black robes and teenagers going out and sacrificing animals in the woods in a big bonfire and wearing these crazy medallions and inverted crosses and listening to black metal and wearing leather. And, you know, this is a false variation of Satanism, you know? And people don't understand how Satanism works in the world and what it's trying to do. That these people want to become God, become a master race, rule everybody else as God on earth, make everybody else their slaves through mind control, through getting people to believe that which is false, like moral relativism, and then act upon it so that they create chaos in their lives and in the world. That's what Satanism is, folks. It's not worshiping anything. It's fucking this world up irreparably because of wrong thinking, not caring about the right things, and wrong behavior. And what Satanists ultimately want is to align people's minds, hearts, and behaviors with all the wrong things, to invert everything. I want to explain to people how there are sects of Satanism that work in different ways but ultimately achieve the same goal or the same end result. And you have to liken this to sects of other religions to understand it. And again, I'm telling you, 99.99% of human beings on earth do not understand this. They think they do, and they have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And they talk out their ass because they have no experiential knowledge of it, nor do they have any even secondhand knowledge told to them from somebody who's been involved, nor do they even have accurate book knowledge of it. They're deficient in all three methods of knowledge. Firsthand, experiential; secondhand, from someone who had direct experiential; and book knowledge from someone who wrote about it through any of the other forms of knowledge. So there's no gnosis, nor is there any actual learning through book knowledge regarding these dynamics. I'm trying to write that and encourage people to do more investigation and research on their own regarding these dynamics. Don't just take my word for it. So to understand the sects or branches of modern Satanism, okay, this is how modern Satanism works in the world, its goals, and how it operates in the world. It helps to compare the sects of modern Satanism to the types of denominations that are found in other religious institutions, such as modern Christianity. The many Christian denominations differ widely in their various beliefs and practices. Their culture, their, churches, their symbols, their rituals, etc., their prayers, their hymns, all of that can differ very widely, even the ways that they, their belief systems. Some could believe in good works, some can believe in salvationism, etc. But ultimately, all forms of Christianity are ultimately unified in their belief in Jesus as the Savior of humanity. That's the one overarching belief that makes Christianity Christian. They generally follow the biblical allegory of Jesus and him as a historical figure. They believe in his historicity, and they attempt to align their ideology and worldview and behavior to the teachings of Jesus found in the New Testament. That's the general overarching ideological principles of Christianity in any given form, in any denomination. And they believe in general Jesus as the Savior of humanity and believe in his divinity. Okay? So the early church was sort of unified. It was a unified religion. Okay? And then it split into the Western Church of Rome and the Eastern Church of Constantinople. Okay? So in the modern world, the Eastern Church became the Eastern Orthodox Church, and then its many different denominations. And then the Western Church of Rome split into Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, and into their different denominations. Roman Catholicism really doesn't have many denominations. It has remained largely the same since the initial East-West split of the early church. But Protestantism has probably split into the most denominations. So they all have different ways of getting there, but ultimately the goal is the same: salvation through Jesus. Okay? That's their one overarching goal of all the forms of Christianity in all the denominations in which it is practiced in the modern world. Similarly, the quote-unquote sects of modern Satanism, which are not what they think. It's not what you think it's going to be, folks, most people. Okay? I'm not going to get into talking about the Church of Satan versus the Temple of Set versus the Satanic Temple versus the Order of the Evil Eye versus the Church of Lucifer, etc., so on, into all the different, variations of modern satanic ideology and groups we can get into, because we could go on for months. That's not what I'm going to talk about as being the main overarching sects of Satanism. We are talking about what its real goals are in society and how it most efficiently and effectively goes about the achievement of those goals, of that one goal, really. We're talking about not really, truly multiple goals, but one overarching goal. Okay? So the many different, the different sects of modern Satanism will differ as to their specific ideologies and the methods by which they will achieve their ends and their rituals, etc., their books, okay? But they all share one overarching goal: to institute global human slavery, and in so doing, permanently destroy human freedom and true human spirituality. And I'm not talking about groups that are self-styled Satanists that are saying they want human freedom. Okay? So I'm not even talking about groups like the Satanic Temple. Now, again, the Satanic Temple's Baphomet statue was in the title card for this presentation. Please do not think I'm talking about any one particular group like that. Okay? I'm not referring to that. That was just used as a symbol to represent the adversarial force in nature, which is the involutionary force, which comes through the satanic ideology in all the many forms it is practiced as the Christian devil, Baphomet, etc. It's just a symbol, folks. I'm not referring to any given specific group. So please understand that. Okay? Because then the first thing I'll hear is, oh, you're just, trying to talk shit on the Church of Satan or the Temple of Set or the Satanic Temple. I personally could care less about those groups. Those are like when I talk about tiny little, way down here on the hierarchy, barely involved in the hierarchy, where they're just, especially groups like the Satanic Temple, which are highly self-styled and don't really align with the higher level ideologies of the tenets that I talked about. They have their own, little agendas that they want to put forward politically, etc. But we're talking about extraordinarily low level on the totem pole of worldwide societal old religion. Okay? I'm talking about something that goes way beyond what any of these groups are even talking about. Okay? The satanic ideology in itself and the worldwide network that I am talking about of its adherents, of hoarding knowledge, taking it into their inner circle, hiding it from the rest of people. They don't care about these little groups and the little people that are their rank and file minions that are propagating whatever ideology they're propagating to whoever will listen. They're nothing to them. Nothing to them. Okay? And in many cases, they just let these groups operate autonomously and there's not really much involvement. I'm talking about when you really get into real world old religion Satanism. Okay? That ultimately goes up to the highest levels of political power, banking power, religious power, child trafficking, pedophilia, running the corporations of the world, running the pharmaceutical cartels, running the drug cartels, totally controlling and running organized crime everywhere throughout the world. Whether it be drug cartels running out of South America and Mexico, whether it be drug cartels running out of the Eastern European nations, whether it be, African gold and diamonds, procuring and smuggling. You can go on and on and on into all the things they have their hands in through organized crime. They control every organized crime syndicate on the face of the earth, and all organized crime heads report to the dark occult. You can be assured of that. It all connects into the intelligence societies. They're all organizing the whole surveillance state. They connect in with all political and financial institutions and think tanks. The high-ranking members are really running the think tanks. The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, Chatham House, Wellington House out of England, the Council for National Policy, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission operating out of the United States, the Bilderberg Group, a worldwide group that ultimately connects in with Satanism and takes their god's name, Baal or Bill, in Bilderberg, because Satan was always depicted as a bull god, depicted as a bull in the Sumerian, Akkadian, Canaanite traditions as Baal, the sun god. So, I went into that, the whole kind of phonetic variation of BL, Babylon, Bible, it goes on and on and on. Baal, making bail in jail, bailiffs, bills, the type of dollar that we use are called bills. We pay bills with bills, the dollar bill. You could just go on and on and on with how many variants. The Liberty Bell, all named after this god, this solar deity, Baal. It's Satan in the ancient world. That's all it is. It's the variant of that name, Satan. But this is the god in the ancient world in the Canaanite, Akkadian, Sumerian tradition. That's where it stems out of. And he had other names. Bill was one of them, obviously. Different various phonetic pronunciation of the vowels of the consonants B and L with interchangeable, vowels in between. I did that at the end as a little wordplay pun game, fun thing at the end of Demystifying the Occult Part 2. But, that's you have to understand. We're talking about this involutionary force, this adversarial force, and they will have sects set up to take the population into the mindset of Satanism to achieve the end goal. The end goal is slavery of the actual high-level old religion, not these little groups that are self-stylized Satanism. Again, the big cult, they're not really caring about them that much. They're not. That's not their. They use them as, some of them are used as psychological vetting and filtration organizations to take people with the certain characteristics and skill sets that they want up through the ranks into the higher levels of the dark occult. That's all those institutions, that's all those smaller level organizations are there for. Putting the feelers out and identifying traits and characteristics in the general public that they want to exploit. So, I'm going to build in the next slide, let's start to move forward, how the modern satanic cults, the modern satanic sects actually operate in our modern society. And this is one of the biggest parts of how our entire modern society is one big satanic ritual, getting everybody to participate in achieving this cult's end goal, the end goal of the old religion. So we're going to represent the religion itself with the Baphomet symbol, which is also the background. Okay, so this is our unified religious cult. You have to look at this as this is the unified early church from the last slide, the last example on the last slide, that is now going to fracture into two main bodies or organizations worldwide that what this is ultimately going to do is help people to usher in the end goal, not really realizing that that's what they're doing, and do it through dialectical means that achieves a secondary purpose of creating adversarial, dialectical, adverse energy. Okay? Or in other words, polarization between two seemingly competing groups. But these two pillars, these two groups that are seemingly competing and pitting themselves against each other are ultimately all filtering down to the same end goal that is in the future, set in the future to be the end goal all along. It's the ultimate dialectical polarity, the polarization dialectic, as I have called it. So let's start building out this chart and explaining how they do it. The two sects, and I'm going to get red, white, and blue on you, folks. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. It's 7/7, only 3 days after so-called Independence Day here in this country, commemorating our alleged split from England, okay, from the British Empire. You know, nothing could be further from the truth. We may have achieved that very briefly, but they did not really ultimately back down ideologically and culturally. And we're still ruled. The sun has never really set on the British Empire. America is still ruled from the shadows from there and from the royalty of Europe, and ultimately the dark occult that operates out of the religious institutions from the Church, the Vatican, Jerusalem, Mecca, etc. All of the ostensible religious traditions. So the two ultimate sects of modern Satanism is the political wings of whatever political parties we're talking about in any nation. Because you have to have two, folks. That's what sets up the royal arch, which creates the most polarizing strength and holds up the most weight. Because you have to have it based upon parental figures. Again, this is the other thing people don't understand. Why are there only ever two political parties? Why is there that liberal and that conservative, that left wing and that right wing? They're all connected to the same body. It's all ultimately one body politic. It's all ultimately one organization that is ultimately vying for ultimate power and control over the human population and to bring us into abject slavery. They just put on two different masks. That's all it ever is and ever has been. And the people are still fooled. They're still in political polarization. They're still all getting all ratcheted up for the big fucking circus coming in 2020. When it never has mattered and never will matter because Satanists run the whole fucking goddamn show, boys and girls. They run the whole fucking show. There ain't no difference between any of them. The master of all government and all political parties is the adversarial force in nature. Whatever you want to refer to that as. It's the thing that's holding us back and keeping us enslaved. And it doesn't matter how long it's been going on for. It's always been wrong. It's always been morally wrong. And that's why it needs to end. That's why slavery needs to be stopped and ended. And the only way to really ultimately do that is to help people to understand how this dynamic works and how it controls the mind. To get people to do its bidding and do its dirty work for it and ultimately usher in themselves against their own interest, the very slavery that it wants to usher in. But people are too damn stupid and childish and naive to want to give up their political identification. I'm on this team. These are my gang colors. These are my cult colors. I'm in the elephant cult. I'm in the jackass cult. Are you in the smacked ass elephant cult or are you in the smacked ass donkey cult? Because whichever one you're in, you're a smacked ass. Dumb as a bag of fucking broken glass. So Satanism fractures itself deliberately to create polarization in the ranks of humanity. And it does it very effectively. It's genius. So what are the methodologies of these different branches or sects of Satanism? See, folks, you got to understand, you can't just tell people, you know what, we're Satanists. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you our ideologies, and then you're going to help us enslave yourselves. Can you imagine if this is what the rulers of the world did? Everybody go, fuck you. We're not doing that. We're not that stupid. Well, I don't know. Maybe humanity is that stupid. You know? Sometimes I just think, yeah, we're just that stupid. People are just that stupid. The bulk of humanity. You know? I'm not that stupid. I was only that stupid till I learned how it really worked, which is why the universe let me see behind the curtain for a while. That's all. It said, hey, you have all these aspirations and you have a lot of these wrong ideas because you haven't delved enough into true spirituality. Guess what? Let's jumpstart your understanding. Let's put you in with the real, true demons behind the scenes for a little bit until you get shaken out of your dumb dunce slumber, you smacked ass. That's what the universe said to me. And boy, did it smack me across the face with a hammer. Okay, I've told the story many times to a point where, I was so, what I saw at the low level that I was involved in, how evil and how bad it was at the level it went to. And I know it goes 1,000 times beyond that. I was so depressed by what I became involved with that I was just sitting in my bedroom, literally doing nothing for the better part of a year except going to the bathroom to piss and shit and to eat food to the minimal extent that I did, and not even basically leaving my bedroom and doing nothing but sulking and writhing in my depression and playing doom metal all day long for the better part of a year. That's what the experience the universe had to give to me to slap me out of my stupor. So I could imagine what it must do to people who don't have 147 IQ. You know? I could only imagine how ensconced and ensnared in their own ego they are, and what a hard case they are compared to my soft case of the ego. So let's look at their methods. Their main methods are appeal to authority, of course, because they want to set themselves up as the gods of society. But they do it through different appeals to authority. See, they can't just tell people, we're going to rule everybody, you're going to help us get it done. Because people wouldn't comply or cooperate with that. They have some semblance of, wanting something good for themselves and for society. So they know people are basically split into two camps. They have people who have motherly abandonment issues, that's the left, who want the authority in the form that they see it to be mommy and to provide. So what they're appealing to there is their sense of misplaced compassion for others. And they want everybody taken care of. That's what they're appealing to. They're appealing to this right-brained imbalanced notion of we have to care for everyone, no matter what it means. See, we have to secure the common good needs, right? It's appeal to authority through misplaced compassion and misplaced appeal to security for the common need. Okay? So you're focusing here on this method in getting into the minds of people. What they're doing, they're exploiting the people who are in this form of brain imbalance and in this form of parental abandonment. Those people themselves are focusing too much on the common good at the expense of individual rights. And you'll always hear them talk about that the common good has to supersede individual rights because they're all concerned about government and authority being mommy or daddy. Being mommy that's going to nurture and care for everybody and provide all the resources for everybody, like mother's milk. And that's, in their mind, they're too right-brained imbalanced. They don't have brain balance between the left and right brain hemisphere. imbalance toward the belief that the individual doesn't matter and that the common good has to supersede everything. And this is what's exploited and preyed upon by the Satanist. The appeal to authority through that misplaced compassion for all of society. And again, these are the hallmarks of right brain dominance. The right brain is too imbalanced negatively. It's too imbalanced dominantly, I should say. And they don't have enough left brain understanding. So I'm seeing that it is 5 o'clock. We're nowhere near the end of the presentation, folks. So more likely than not, instead of rushing for calls, I'm going to unpack this. And it'll take as long as it takes. And we'll do a whole call-in show next week probably, because I feel this is extraordinarily important material for people to deeply comprehend and share with other people. So I want to make the presentation as strong as possible. So if I somehow do wrap it up and we take some calls, great, but more likely than not, let's do a whole call-in show next week on this, and I like doing those. Okay? The method of the right-wing sect of Satanism, or right-wing politics, is appeal to authority through selfishness and security of individual desires. See? So you're preying on people's compassion, their selflessness on the left-wing faction. But the right-wing faction or sect realizes there are other people in society that are more selfish and care more about themselves than providing for the common good. And so you're going to prey on that dynamic. You're going to say, well, these people have selfish individual desires. Let's prey on that dynamic. So these are people who focus too much on selfish concerns at the expense of the true common good, which there is such a thing as. That's the law of freedom. Aggregate freedom comes about through aggregate morality. That's the common good. Doing good in the common sense term of understanding conscience by understanding the actual objective difference between right and wrong behavior. Okay? So in this case, you're seeing that there are certain people who are more selfish than they are concerned for the well-being of others. So you want to prey on that with the right-wing politics, because you're preying on their individual desire to generate prosperity for themselves. Okay? And become either rich or prosperous, have their own rights protected. Okay? But not worry so much about all of what's going on in all of society. The right-wing factions are always more self-absorbed and self-oriented. The left-wing factions very rarely ever care about individual rights because they're only ever concerned about society as a whole. There's no balance there for both individual rights and the good of society. That's the equilibrium point. Okay? This is what the mathematician John Nash talked about as a game theory solution, where the maximum amount of people who prosper and come out as winning is the people who focus simultaneously in a state of equilibrium on what is both good and right for themselves and good and morally right for all of society. And that's a very difficult balance point to strike because most people are imbalanced toward one brain hemisphere or another. And the occultists know this because they know more about the brain, the physiology, the psychology than almost all of the people put together. One of them knows more about that than almost all of humanity put together, let alone tens of thousands of them operating in concert on the same page. That's why they constitute a mastermind of evil, which the universe is going to grant their manifestations because they're all on the same page and we're all divided in the dialectic that they've set up for us. And people still can't see it and still won't abandon it because they're too attached to it egoically and can't admit they've been duped. The right-wing political sect is always hallmarks of left brain dominance or left brain imbalance. So these are the methodologies they operate through. Identify the people you're trying to enslave. Some are more selfish. Some are more concerned about just the good of society and don't care about the individual. It's brilliant. It's genius level methodology, strategy of conquering, of dividing and conquering. Genius level. And that's why the average imbecile, the average person eating poison, drinking poison, watching poison, cannot cognize or conceive of the level of these people's genius and the level of their methodologies at work in the world. They can't even conceive of it. And again, I'm not tailoring this as a presentation or my show or all of my work. Folks, I'm not tailoring this for the average imbecile. I am tailoring this for the people who have enough holistic intelligence to take it in, understand what I'm saying, and then help teach it to other people who are even at a lower level of intellectual acumen than they are. So, I don't take the hermeticist, elitist idea that this information just isn't for everybody. It has to ultimately be for everybody. What I'm saying is my teaching method isn't for everybody. Not everyone will be able to receive it from Mark Passio. I am under no delusion that everyone can. That's why I'm not looking for everyone to follow me in my work. I am looking for a handful of tremendously good and intelligent, holistically intelligent people to become teachers and propagate this knowledge out much farther than I ever could as an individual. Because I realize people are not going to take this, every person is not going to take this information from me. It will have to be put in a myriad of different ways and methods and means to reach a much greater number of people than I will ever be able to reach as an individual. That doesn't mean that I think ultimately this information is only for a few. It is for all in an egalitarian sense. I think it is simplistic enough at some level that everyone can really understand how it works. It's just not everybody's going to be able to learn that from Mark Passio, admittedly. So let's look at then where this goes. It then derives social manifestations in different forms. When the left-wing sect of Satanism puts all of its methodologies of mind control into effect to get people on board with the left-wing agenda, the manifestations become false notions of equality, which isn't equality under natural law at all. It becomes sameness, homogeneity, lack of differentiation in society. Everybody having to think like they think and be on board with their agendas and be on board with their narratives. It becomes this notion of democracy, the rule of the people, the rule of whatever we say is the law. It's not the rule of natural law. It's the rule of man's law. That's what democracy is. And a small group, or a majority, I should say, can make it up. That's all democracy is. It's the opposite of an oligarchy. In a sense, an oligarchy or a few people make it up. In a democracy, the majority get to make it up, even if they're wrong. It's not based on any true objective standard of morality. It's based on whatever the majority thinks right and wrong is. And then they could just institute it and impose it on the masses. Impose it on the minority. Just because they held the vote. Well, if you held the vote, we can strip everybody's rights just because we erroneously think that that's a right for us to do. Well, we can do it in a democracy. That's one of the things it leads to. It's one of the places we're at right now. And then eventually you have creeping socialism, or what's known as Fabian socialism. My producer's pointing out a spelling error. I'm going to fix it right now. So corporatism. There we go. I was missing an O. Okay. Put a save on that. Thank you for that. Let me go back to my slide there. I'll build this out again real quick. Okay. So the social manifestations of the left-wing sect of Satanism, we have the false notions of equality, democracy, and we have what's called creeping socialism or Fabian socialism. This is getting to the place where the entire society's needs and resources, the resources of the society, services are entirely controlled by government. Okay, so it's means of production and distribution are controlled by the state. That's what all socialism really is. But you get to it out of democracy, this idea that the people can decide. It passes through the stage called Fabian socialism or creeping socialism. In the modern leftist society in the United States, they are now calling that democratic socialism, because it's the in-between phase between democracy and pure socialism, which is the control of resources by the state, ultimately. So then we finally have real socialism, real left-wing socialism, and then that eventually becomes either an oligarchical party controlling the entire government or a dictator controlling it all, and then you have communism, which is totalitarianism. It is the left-wing form of total control over a society in the handful of either a very few group of people or in the hands of one individual. It's a symbolic individual, of course. It's really controlled by the Satanists, who are the true members of the unified religious cult in the middle. That's who's really controlling it. And ultimately, as we're going to see, they're really controlled by the involutionary force itself, or Satan as a force, okay? So then if we look at the social manifestations of the right-wing sect, okay, we have this false notions of rights, where people think some people have rights that others don't based on their power and wealth in society. Or this idea that we can delegate rights to certain groups of people. Both groups, left and right sects, believe that. Then this degenerates into minarchy or limited government. You know, even like Republican form of government, the Republic. It's all minarchy and limited government. It's still the notion that slavery is legitimate. It's still the notion that some people have rights that others don't have, that we're not truly equals under natural law, that certain rights can be delegated or granted to people to do that other people don't have the right to do. That's what all government is. And then this will descend as a in-between step between another form of socialism called National Socialism. We have crony capitalism or corporatism. And this was the in-between step that led to Nazi Germany. We have that here. We have a mixture of Fabian socialism and crony capitalism or corporatism. It's not real capitalism. That's what we have going on. We have these two sects that are combining their efforts, their methods, their social manifestations, and ultimately bridging to the one overarching goal in U.S. society in particular. So in this in-between stage on the right-wing side, you have crony, quote-unquote, capitalism. It's not real capitalism at all, or corporatism. And that will eventually lead to a form of socialism called National Socialism, out-of-control nationalism combined with corporatism. And eventually that is the totalitarian form of government called fascism. That's what it will become long-term. But folks, it doesn't matter whether you call it the blue donkey or the red elephant. I don't care what you call it. They're both forms of Satanism that lead to one control. I don't care what sect of the cult you want to believe in. You could believe in the left-wing donkey cult, the right-wing political cult, but it's all stemming from the unified religious cult called Satanism. And they have one goal, folks, and that is human slavery. That's what the one goal is, you know? They want to give you the blue faction and the red faction and make you think, oh, your team is better, your brand of cola is better, your brand of cotton candy is better. You could have the blue or the pink brand of cotton candy. It's all fucking poison, you know? Have this form of high fructose water or this form of high fructose water. It's all poison. The cult doesn't care how they get there, folks. Do you realize that? You know, this is what people who still believe in politics don't get. The cult does not care how they get to abject human slavery. Doesn't matter to them. They couldn't care less. They could do it through the left-wing faction. They could do it through the right-wing faction. Sorry, I accidentally clicked back. I'll have to build the slide out again. So watch this. Let's go back to the slide. Yeah, they don't care whether they come at it through the left or right-wing faction. They would prefer to get there directly by telling you we're your rulers and we're taking you into slavery whether you like it or not. Most people wouldn't go for that direct method. That's why they have to do it through an occulted methodology and make people believe we're the ones in control. We're the government. We're the ones who are instituting all of these laws and rules. No, they're duping you into believing that you're that person when the cult is that group of people that are the masters behind the scenes. That's all. And people are just that brainwashed and that refusing to admit that they are duped and fooled. See, folks, I built this all out deliberately in red, white, and blue colors, to celebrate our independence because we're so free, Government isn't slavery. No, it's the rule of the people. That's what we have here. Yeah. So here's all nice red, white, and blue colors on our slide here. Let's keep it there for a moment. Beautiful red, white, and blue colors to celebrate our independence here in the United States and throughout the rest of the world. We're so free. There's no satanic cult ruling the earth. No. That's all hearsay. That's all conjecture. That's conspiracy theory. Or it isn't happening at all. Not a bit, because I don't want to believe that that's what the world is. So here, if it makes you feel any better, I know a lot of people can't handle it. They have a really thin skin when it comes to this. They don't want to hear that we're enslaved. They don't want to hear that the ultimate goal of all politics is the slavery of all humanity. Okay? Let's even go back to this full screen. If it makes you feel any better, okay? Here's what I'll do. Let's put the goal in nice red, white, and blue letters, just like this. Okay? Does that make everybody feel proud? Proud to be an American? It makes us feel so wonderful. Our slavery is red, white, and blue. The goal that the Satanists took us to, we'll wrap it up in nice, pretty colors. Let's wave a flag around. Let's be proud that we're part of this system. And it's just fine and dandy. It's hunky-dory. Nothing needs to change. We're free. We've always been free. We'll always be free. I mean, the only thing that's really missing in this picture is the big fucking clown with big fucking clown shoes and a big fucking red, white, and blue wig. I got to break him back out. That a Satanist from the Order of the Evil Eye sent to me when I asked him about, does the high-ranking members of the hierarchy that you're still in touch with, what do they think of the anarchist movement and the freedom movement at work in the world? What do they think of the truth movement and trying to expose 9/11 and trying to, explain to people that government is slavery and that, we're really a slave society? And without a word to answer my email, he sent me back one JPEG image of a clown in a big polka dot I think it was a polka dots jumpsuit with big red floppy clown shoes and a big multicolored, like Ronald McDonald style wig with a party hat, honking a horn, like one of those boom, 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 those horns, those clown horns, dun, 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 makes that noise, honking one of those horns. Yeah, that's it. No words, nothing, just an attachment. No, reply via text, email, nothing, just an attachment of that JPEG. That was his answer. And again, I've said it in the past and I'll say it again. Folks, I wish I could disagree with that Satanist's response, but I cannot. I cannot disagree. I have to concur that is what's happening. That is exactly what should be thought by the higher level Satanists as to any little modicum of resistance that's ever been offered. Again, my take on it is it's a piss poor pittance. Yeah. Let's make that another, mainstay term here on what on earth is happening. Get as offended as you like as to what I said about American society and world society for that matter. It's a bunch of naive, fucking clowned out children that have no idea what's going on in the world behind the scenes of ostensible politics. know nothing about real world Satanism, know nothing about the master psychology that these dark occultists wield over them, and the level of mind control that they have the public in, know nothing about their methodologies, know nothing about their end goals. And they think that they're not duped, and they think they know what's going on in society, and they're a bunch of fucking know-nothing, naive children. And ultimately, they're clowns. They're the real clowns. You could say that the masters of the world are clowns, all the political dupes that usher in their satanic agenda are clowns, all you want. It's great. Make fun of them too, because they're clowns too, because they're getting thrown under the bus. Okay? But let me tell you who the real clowns are. For a circus ticket to be bought, there have to be attendees of the circus. And those are the real fucking clowns. Okay? All the clowns could go to the circus tent and say, we're going to put on a big show, the greatest show on earth, and dupe everybody and lie to everybody and enslave them all. But if nobody shows up, there's no fucking circus. But you know what has happened? 99.99% of the human population has showed up to the fucking circus. And they believe the show is real. When it's all in their mind, it's all big mind control fucking puppet show to put them into one place. And that's what's listed right there at the bottom of that slide, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. That's the goal, human slavery. And that's where we're at. Because people are too stupid to see all of the things I've laid out here on this slide. The sects of Satanism, the methods of Satanism, the social manifestations of Satanism, and the goal of Satanism in our society. And it's all one big satanic ritual that they get people to go along with their own enslavement.